Greetings to you, people of God. It is another time in the presence of God. Another time we are going to share the scriptures and tell Bible stories and listen to Bible stories and also share lessons from there and learn and get better in the things of God. You see, I I chose to do the video this way this time around, so you can hear my voice instead of the other type of voice. Okay, hear my voice personally and we can interact. So if you enter the room, you are welcome, and I encourage you to let me know that you've entered the room by typing a chat. So today we are going to listen to the story of David. You see, if you don't know, you may think that when David was made the king of Israel, he just started ruling the whole of Israel at once. But it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. So we are going to look at the incidents that surrounded David's becoming the king of Israel, and we will learn a lot of lessons from there. So as you enter the room, please post a chat. Let me know that you are in the room. I really need that from you. So that let's engage ourselves, okay? Let there be that engagement, that interaction between me and you. That's why I decided to use my voice and talk with us so that we can engage with each other and interact one-on-one. I really want that. I really want that, okay? All right, so what are we talking about? We are talking about King David, right? Recall that when God rejected Saul as the king of Israel, so God told Samuel to go to the house of Jesse and that he was going to show him whom to anoint as the next king of Israel that will be taking over from Saul. So Samuel went to the house of Jesse, and after all said and done, it happened that David was the one that God chose. So Samuel anointed David as the succeeding king of Israel. David started doing exploit as a result of that. But recall that before then, David was a shepherd, shepherding the flock of his father. And while he was doing the work of a shepherd boy, he really distinguished himself in the use of a sling, in the use of the sling and stone, in defending himself. So on one of those occasions, David was able to use a sling and a stone to kill a bear that came to attack his father's flock. On another occasion, he also used a sling and a stone to kill a lion. So, and it was how he summed up the courage to face Goliath one of those days when Goliath was terrorizing the army of Israel. And he also used a sling and a stone to bring down Goliath. So that gave David a very strong popularity in Israel that made people to begin to sing to him, to sing praises to him. So because of that, Saul, who was the king, became jealous and began to look for a way to eliminate him. Though Saul, saw the courage and military expertise of David and asked him to come and begin to serve in the palace, because Saul was interested in gallant men. Okay, if he sees that you are gallant, he will bring you into the army, because he himself was a gallant soldier. So as David was serving in the house of Saul, Saul was trying to eliminate him. On two occasions, Saul threw a spear at him when he didn't even expect it, but God saved him. So when David noticed that Saul was trying to eliminate him, he ran away. All right. And on one of those occasions, his best friend, who happened to be Jonathan, son of Saul, came and confirmed to him that his father was very angry with him and wanted to eliminate him. So David said, okay, if that is the case, then I'm going to run away for my dear life. He ran away. So as he was running away for his dear life, fleeing from Saul, he kept fleeing until he got tired. One day he said to himself, see, if I continue like this, it is possible that one day Saul will catch me. So instead of me to continue to run within the territory of Israel, let me run into the territory of the Philistines, our enemies, because the Philistines were their arch enemies. So because he felt that if he ran there, Saul will not have the mind to come and look for him there, because that was the territory of their enemies. So when he went there, the king of the Philistines at the time was a man called Achish. So he asked Achish to please allow him to stay there. And remember, as a soldier he was, and as somebody who had won the heart of the people, he also had people under his command. He had 600 men. But King Saul was the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the entire Israel. So he had thousands of men, thousands upon thousands of soldiers. So 600 men were nothing compared to the entire army of Israel. But these 600 men were very loyal to David. So King Achish gave them a place called Ziklag, which was at the outskirts of their main city in the land of the Philistines, and asked him to stay there. So he stayed there with his men, and he felt a bit safe. But a problem arose at a point, because King Achish, the king of the Philistines, wanted to wage a war against Israel, and particularly against Saul, King Saul of Israel. They wanted Saul by all means. So they came and consulted David and asked him to join them to wage a war against Israel. So that became a very serious situation. I don't know whether in your life you have ever found yourself in a dilemma, a very serious dilemma. We are not talking about the joke, it's a very serious one, like the one David found himself in. Because David found himself, not knowing which side to fall to. Should he join the Philistines to fight against his own brothers? Because on the side of the Israelites was Jonathan, his best friend, and many other people who knew him and he knew them. How would he feel like if he went to the war front and saw Jonathan? Was he going to eliminate Jonathan or what? So it was a very serious dilemma. Or would he go back to Israel and then fight against the Philistines? Saul was after him. In fact, on two occasions before this time, Saul had entered into the same cave where David and his men went to hide themselves. Saul entered there with his men, 3,000 men, chasing after David and his 600 men. So in the first instance, on the first occasion, when Saul slept, David went there, and one of his men told him, hey, this is the day that the Lord has given your enemies into your hand. Eliminate him at once. David said, no, I will not lay my hand on the anointed one of God. But David cut part of his cloth and went away. So in the morning, he came up and called Saul and said, ah, my Lord, look, look at your dress. I have cut part of it. If I wanted to eliminate you, I would have done that. So why are you after my life? Saul looked at it and regretted that he was pursuing an innocent person, and he promised never to pursue him again. But because an evil spirit was in charge of Saul's life, another day he went again looking for David, entered into the cave, another cave where David and his men were hiding. And in the night, David went there again. The same scenario played out. David still told his right-hand man, that he wasn't going to lay hand on Saul. And so what did he do? This time around, he collected Saul's spear, which was his weapon, and collected his water bottle. So in the morning, he came out when Saul was going. He came out and told Saul that, look, I have your spear and your water bottle here. So if I wanted to eliminate you, I would have done that, but I will not. So why are you pursuing me? Leave me alone. Saul regretted again and went back. So it was after then that David ran to the Philistines to stay, to hide. And now there is war. There is a war between the Philistines and Israel. So David went went to the king of Philistines to discuss terms, because the king of the Philistines invited him for the talk. So David just casually promised the king of the Philistines that he would join them to fight, but he didn't really know what to do. He was in a very big confusion, dilemma. All right, but what saved David was that the commanders of the Philistine army did not trust David. They went to the king and told him, my dear, we better not give this young man this opportunity. He will quickly hand us over when we get to the battlefield. We don't trust him. Send him back. So the Philistine king told David that his commanders don't trust him, that he should go back to where he gave them to stay, which was Ziklag, and stay, that he shouldn't join them to the war. That was what saved David. So David went back there to Ziklag and stayed, and the war was raging between the Philistines and Israel. But when David went back to Ziklag, he discovered that the Amalekites had attacked Ziklag and taken away all their children and wives and burnt down their houses, destroyed everywhere. So there was war between Amalekites and David and his men, and there was another very fierce raging war between Philistine and Israel on the other hand. So David didn't even know what happened in the war between Philistine and Israel because he was busy pursuing the Amalekites. So he inquired from God what to do, and God told him to pursue them. He and his 600 men went after the Amalekites, and somewhere on the way, 200 of the men became very weak because they had been walking, trekking for many days, and they have been on the way, so they couldn't continue. So they were asked to stay there and take care of other of their properties, while the other 400 went, proceeded to pursue the Amalekites. So as they went there, through the help of one of the servants of one of the Amalekites, who was from Egypt and was abandoned on the way because he was sick, the young man David and his men met him and gave him some food and took care of him, and then he revived. So David asked him to show them the way. The young man showed them the way, and they got to Amalek and attacked them and decimated them and recovered everything, every child, every woman, every of their property, and that was how they were successful. And they decimated the Amalekites seriously, and they returned victorious. So when they returned home, they came back to these 200, and all of them followed back home to Ziklag. So it was at this point that many other things began to play out. All right. So when the war between Israel and Philistine was raging, it became very fierce, so fierce that the Philistines really injured Saul very badly. And this thing happened on a mountain called Mount Gilboa. So when Saul could not continue fighting, he asked his armor bearer to quickly eliminate him. But the armor bearer was afraid. He refused to do that. So when he wanted to go out, for according to the Bible in 1 Samuel chapter 31, Saul fell on his sword and took his life. So when his armor bearer saw that his master had taken his life, he too fell on his own sword, and took his life too, because he didn't know how to explain what happened if he went back to the country, to the town. In that very war, three of Saul's sons also fell. They also died in the war, and these were some of Israelites' finest soldiers. They included Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua. Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua. These were very strong Israeli soldiers, and they were sons of Saul. They also lost their lives in that same battle because it was terrible. So that was how Saul lost his life. That was how Saul died. And David didn't even know. So in 2 Samuel chapter 1, that was when David got to know about the death of Saul, Jonathan, and the other children of Saul. So Jonathan had just returned from, David had just returned from striking down the Amalekites, and then he went back to Ziklag, still running away from Saul, not knowing what happened at the war front between Israel and Philistines. So, according to the Bible, on the third day, a man arrived from Saul's camp with his clothes torn and dust on his head. When he came to David, he fell to the ground to pay him honor. Where have you come from? David asked him. He answered, I have escaped from the Israelite camp. What happened? David asked him. Tell me. The men fled from the battle, he replied. Many of them fell and died, and Saul and his son Jonathan are dead. Then David said to the young man the young man who brought him the report, how do you know that Saul and his son Jonathan are dead? I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, the young man said, and there was Saul leaning on his spear with the chariots and their drivers in hot pursuit. When he turned around and saw me, he called out to me, and I said, what can I do? He asked me, who are you? An Amalekite, I answered. Then he said to me, stand here by me and kill me. I'm in the throes of death, but I am still alive. So I stood beside him and killed him, because I knew that after he had fallen, he could not survive. And I took the crown that was on his head and the band on his arm, and have brought them here to my Lord. Then David and all the men with him took hold of their clothes and tore them. They mourned and wept and fasted till evening for Saul and his son Jonathan, and for the army of the Lord, and for the nation of Israel, because they had fallen by the sword. So it happened that Israel was defeated in this battle. Philistine really decimated Israel. But this young man, the truth is that this young man just brought trouble upon himself. He wasn't the one that eliminated Saul, but he just wanted to to play psychophancy to please David, by telling David that he was the one that eliminated his enemy Saul. All right. So he took the crown of Saul and his other ornaments and brought to David, trying to please David. So in your life, if you try to sing praises to people, play psychophancy, you just have to be careful. It can be very dangerous and it can boomerang against you. So what this young man tried to do for David, thinking that he was doing him favor, rather brought him trouble. How? Okay, let's continue. So David said to the young man who brought him the report, "Where are you from?" "I am the son of a foreigner, an Amalekite," he answered. David asked him, "Why weren't you afraid to lift your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed?" Then David called one of his men and said, "Go, strike him down." So he struck him down, and he died. For David had said to him, "Your blood be on your own head. Your own mouth testified against you when you said, 'I killed the Lord's anointed.'" So you see, the innocent young man just lost his life because he was trying to play psychophancy, lip service. That is dangerous. So as a Christian, you have to be careful what you do. For those of us, some of us who try to play psychophancy, maybe for your pastor to see you and notice you, you are not serving your pastor, you are serving God. Whatever you do, do it to please God and not to please any man. All right? So it was at this point that the story of David continued. So after the demise of Saul, David began to gain strength. All right. So the story continues this way. In the course of time, David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I go up to one of the towns of Judah?" That was David asking. And what did the Lord say? The Lord said, "Go up." David asked, "Where shall I go?" "To Hebron," the Lord answered. So David went up there with his two wives, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. David also took the men who were with him, each with his family, and they settled in Hebron and these towns. Then the men of Judah came to Hebron, and there they anointed him king, as you can see. So David became the king in Hebron. So that is where we drew our topic, which says that in our description, where we say that David did not become the king of Israel, the whole of Israel at once. All right, because there was still a problem between him and Saul's family. The remaining people in Saul's family and Saul's acquaintances didn't want David to really become the king. So some people who loved David went to where he was living in Hebron, one of the towns of Judah, and made him a king there. And so David began to rule only Judah. But what of the remaining part of Israel? What happened to it? Okay, we shall soon see. All right. So David Then the men of Judah came to Hebron, and there they anointed David king over the tribe of Judah. When David was told that it was the men of Jabesh Gilead who had buried Saul, he sent messengers to them to say to them, "The Lord bless you for showing kindness, for showing this kindness to Saul, your master, by burying him." Because at some point in the past, Saul had helped these people of Jabesh Gilead. He had fought and defended them when their enemy came against them. Okay, so when Saul died, they remembered Saul's kindness and also showed him kindness, because the Philistines cut off his head and didn't bury him. They just hung him somewhere, he and his children. So the people of Jabesh Gilead, when they brought him down, he and his children, and went and buried them. And so David blessed them for doing that. And David said, "May the Lord now show you kindness and faithfulness, and I too will show you the same favor, because you have done this. Now then, be strong and brave, for Saul your master is dead, and the people of Judah have anointed me king over them." All right, so, but even though David expressed this kindness towards Saul, there was still some level of enmity between David and the family of Saul, as we shall soon see. Meanwhile, Abner, son of Ner, the commander of Saul's army, had taken Ishbosheth, son of Saul, and brought him over to Mahanaim. So Abner was the commander of Saul's army. So he brought Ishbosheth, one of the sons of Saul, to Mahanaim, and he made him king over Gilead, Ashuri, and Jezreel, and also over Ephraim, Benjamin, and all Israel. So Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, became king over the greater part of Israel, while David became the king over only Judah. So Israel was split into two, and there was serious enmity within the people. But Abner did something wrong, because he knew that the Lord had anointed David as the next, that is the succeeding king. So why did he go ahead to make Ishbosheth the next king? It was just a way of creating more problems. So Ishbosheth, son of Saul, was 40 years old when he became king over Israel, and he reigned 2 years. The tribe of Judah, however, remained loyal to David. The length of time David was king in Hebron over Judah was 7 years and 6 months. Abner, son of Ner, with the men of Ishbosheth, son of Saul, left Mahanaim and went to Gibeon. Then Joab, son of Zeruiah, Joab was David's army commander, while Abner was Saul's army commander. So Joab, son of Zeruiah, and David's men went out and met them at the pool of Gibeon. One group sat down on one side of the pool and one group on the other side. Then Abner said to Joab, "Let's have some of the young men get up and fight hand to hand in front of us." So it was Abner that was, asking for war, more fight between the two sides. And this Abner, like I said, was the commander of Saul's army. He asked the commander of David's army that they should fight. So they stood up and were counted off, 12 men for Benjamin and Ishbosheth, son of Saul, and 12 for David. Then each man grabbed his opponent by the head and thrust his dagger into his opponent's side, and they fell down together. So that place in Gibeon was called Helkat Hazurim. Helkat Hazurim, because many people lost their lives there in a senseless war. The battle that day was very fierce, and Abner and the Israelites were defeated by David's men. The three sons of Zeruiah were there: Joab, Abishai, and Asahel. So Zeruiah was the father of David's commander, Joab. So his other brothers were also there, and they were Abishai and Asahel. Now, Asahel was fleet-footed as a wild gazelle. He chased Abner, turning neither to the right nor to the left as he pursued him. Abner looked behind him and asked, "Is that you, Asahel?" "It is," he answered. Then Abner said to him, "Turn aside to the right or to the left. Take on one of the young men and strip him of his weapons." But Asahel would not stop chasing him. Probably Asahel was chasing him empty-handed, and Abner was even suggesting to him, "Take a weapon, so that if you are fighting me, you can fight with a weapon." Asahel would not listen. He kept chasing after Abner empty-handed. Again, Abner warned Asahel, "Stop chasing me. Why should I strike you down? How could I look your brother Joab in the face?" But Asahel refused to give up the pursuit. So Abner thrust the butt of his spear into Asahel's stomach, and the spear came out through his back. He fell there and died on the spot. And every man stopped when he came to the place where Asahel had fallen and died. So Asahel, one of the brothers of Joab, the commander of David's army, lost his life as well. But Joab and Abishai pursued Abner, and as the sun was setting, they came to the hill of Ammah, near Gia, on the way to the wasteland of Gibeon. Then the men of Benjamin rallied behind Abner. They formed themselves into a group and took their stand on top of a hill. Abner called out to Joab. This time around, he saw that things were getting out of hand and he began to ask for peace. He said, "Must the sword devour forever? Don't you realize that this will end in bitterness? How long before you order your men to stop pursuing their fellow Israelites?" So now Abner realized that they were all Israelites after many souls had died. Joab answered, "As surely as God lives, if you had not spoken, the men would have continued pursuing them until morning." So Joab blew the trumpet, and all the troops came to a halt. They no longer pursued Israel, nor did they fight anymore. So Joab was very reasonable. He stopped the fight. All that night, Abner and his men marched through the Arabah. They crossed the Jordan, continued through the morning hours, and came to Mahanaim. Then Joab stopped pursuing Abner and assembled the whole army. Besides Asahel, 19 of David's men were found missing. But David's men had killed 360 Benjamites who were with Abner. So Abner lost 360 men in a senseless war. They took Asahel and buried him in his father's tomb at Bethlehem. Then Joab and his men marched all night and arrived at Hebron by daybreak. So all these things were happening, and David wasn't there. Okay, so the war between the house of Saul and the house of David lasted a long time. David grew stronger and stronger, while the house of Saul grew weaker and weaker. During the war between the house of Saul and the house of David, Abner had been strengthening his own position in the house of Saul. Now, Saul had a concubine named Rizpah. Rizpah was the daughter of Aiah, and Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, whom Abner made king over the bigger side of Israel, the bigger part of Israel. Ishbosheth said to Abner, "Why did you sleep with my father's concubine?" And it became a very offensive accusation. So Abner was very angry because of what Ishbosheth said. So he answered, "Am I a dog's head on Judah's side? This very day I am loyal to the house of your father, Saul, and to his family and friends. I haven't handed you over to David. I haven't handed you over to David. Yet now you accuse me of an offense involving this woman. May God deal with Abner, be it ever so severely, if I do not do for David what the Lord promised him on oath. So, people, Abner knew that the Lord had promised David to be the next king, yet Abner was trying to force Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, on Israel. So now, because of the accusation, he quickly came back to his senses and began to say that he was going to do for David what the Lord had promised him. So he felt within himself that he was a kingmaker. Whoever he pronounced king would be the king, simply because he was the commander of Saul's army. This was a case of taking too much, expecting, making yourself to be too important. And that was Abner's problem. Why would you just be, flinging here and there, swinging like a pendulum, you know, trying to make yourself the Almighty? Whoever you pronounce king becomes king. Then Abner sent messengers on his behalf to say to David, whose land is it? He asked David, whose land is it? Make an agreement with me and I will help you bring all Israel over to you. You see, he was still showing some pride. This was a promise made by God, not Abner. But now Abner is trying to assume so much authority. Good, said David, I will make an agreement with you, but I demand one thing of you. Do not come into my presence unless you bring Michal, daughter of Saul, when you come to see me. So Michal, daughter of Saul, was David's wife. He was David's first wife, whom David married after he eliminated Goliath. Because Saul had promised that whoever would defeat Goliath would marry his daughter. So when David succeeded in doing that, he married Saul's daughter called Michal. But when the war between Saul's family and David raged on, David ran away and left his wife behind. So the woman went back to her father's house. So now that it was time for peacemaking between the house of David and the house of Saul, David demanded from Abner to bring back his wife, Michal. Then David sent messengers to Ishbosheth, son of Saul, demanding, give me my wife, Michal, whom I betrothed to myself for the price of 100 Philistine foreskins. So it didn't even end only in defeating Goliath. Saul went ahead to say, you have to also bring down 100 Philistines and bring their foreskins home. David did that. He was a wonderful soldier. So Ishbosheth gave orders and had her taken away from her husband, Paltiel, son of Laish. So because Saul hated David, they had taken away this maker and given to another man called Paltiel, son of Laish. So her husband, however, went with her, weeping behind her all the way to Bahurim. Then Abner said to him, go back home. So he went back home. That was a very wrong move. Why would you take away somebody's wife whom you have given to him already and give to another man? So Abner conferred with the elders of Israel and said, for some time you have wanted to make David your king. Now do it, for the Lord promised David, by my servant David, I will rescue my people Israel from the hand of the Philistines and from the hand of all their enemies. Abner knew all these things, but he was playing sycophancy to the house of Saul. Abner also spoke to the Benjamites in person. Then he went to Hebron to tell David everything that Israel and the whole tribe of Benjamin wanted to do. When Abner, who had 20 men with him, came to David at Hebron, David prepared a feast for him and his men. Then Abner said to David, "Let me go at once and assemble all Israel for my lord the king, so that they may make a covenant with you, and that you may rule over all that your heart desires." So David sent Abner away and he went in peace. You know, David thought that they had made peace, and that was it. But something would happen that David never knew about. Just then, David's men and Joab returned from a raid and brought with them a great deal of plunder. But Abner was no longer with David in Hebron because David had sent him away and he had gone in peace. When Joab and all the soldiers with him arrived, he was told that Abner, son of Ner, had come to the king, and that the king had sent him away, and that he had gone in peace. Remember that this time, David had not even started ruling all Israel. He was still ruling Judah alone. And according to the Bible, he ruled Judah for 7.5 years. All right, while Ishbosheth was ruling the other part of Israel, the bigger side. So Joab went to the king and said, "What have you done? Look, Abner came to you. Why did you let him go? Now he is gone. You know Abner, son of Ner. He came to deceive you and observe your movements and find out everything you are doing." Joab then left David and sent messengers after Abner, and they brought him back from the cistern at Sirah. But David did not know. Remember, David did not know the plan of Joab. Now, when Abner returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside into an inner chamber, as if to speak with him privately, and there to avenge the blood of his brother Asahel. Remember that Abner was the one that eliminated Asahel. So Joab stabbed him in the stomach and he gave up. So that was how Abner lost his life. He thought he was the kingmaker, but God wanted to show him that nobody shares his glory with him. So David would not have been made the king of Israel by Abner, but by God himself. This is what it looks like when you want to play God. It is very dangerous. So Abner lost his life. Later, when David heard about this, he said, "I and my kingdom are forever innocent before the Lord concerning the blood of Abner, son of Ner. May his blood fall on the head of Joab and on his whole family. May Joab's family never be without someone who has a running sore, or leprosy, or who leans on a crutch, or who falls by the sword, or who lacks food." Well, David was a nice man, so he didn't like what Joab, his commander, did to Abner, and he placed the curse on Joab. But all these things were playing out. In fact, it is only God that knows. But the advice here and the lesson to learn is that you should do the right thing at all times. Don't play the script of Abner. And on the other hand, Joab took revenge for Abner eliminating his own brother. But David didn't like it because Joab was his right-hand man, and he feared that the people would say that this was a conspiracy between him and Abner and Joab. So he decided to show and to play his innocence. Joab and his brother Abishai murdered Abner because he had eliminated their brother Asahel in the battle at Gibeon. Then David said to Joab and all the people with him, "Tear your clothes and put on sackcloth and walk in mourning in front of Abner." King David himself walked behind the bier. They buried Abner in Hebron, and the king wept aloud at Abner's tomb. All the people wept also. The king sang his lament for Abner. All right. Then they all came and urged David to eat something while it was still day, but David took an oath, saying, May God deal with me, be it ever so severely, if I taste bread or anything else before the sun sets. So David stood hungry until sunset. So all the people took note and were pleased. Indeed, everything the king did pleased them. So in that day, all the people there and all Israel knew that the king had no part in the murder of Abner, son of Ner. Then the king said to his men, "Do you not realize that the commander and a great man has fallen in Israel this day? And today, though I am the anointed king, I am weak, and these sons of Zeruiah are too strong for me. May the Lord repay the evildoers according to his evil deeds." So that was how Abner lost his life. But the fight was not yet over. The war between Saul's family and David's family was not yet over. But David wasn't fighting Saul's family himself. It was people who were loyal to him, who loved him so much, that were doing the fighting. And he didn't send anybody. They were doing all those things on their own, but he didn't send them. He was even not in support of their actions. He just wanted God to fight for him by himself and in his own way. So when Ishbosheth, son of Saul, heard that Abner had died in Hebron, he lost courage, and all Israel became alarmed. Now Saul's son had two men who were leaders of raiding bands. One was named Baana, and the other Rechab. They were sons of Rimmon, the Beerothite, from the tribe of Benjamin. Beeroth is considered part of Benjamin because the people of Beeroth fled to Gittaim, and have resided there as foreigners to this day. Jonathan, son of Saul, had a son who was lame in both feet. He was 5 years old when the news about Saul and Jonathan came to Jezreel. His nurse picked him up and fled, but as she hurried to leave, he fell and became disabled. His name was Mephibosheth. That was the son of Jonathan, the only son he had. All right. Now Rechab and Baana, the sons of Rimmon, the Beerothite, set out for the house of Ishbosheth, and they arrived there in the heat of the day while he was taking his noonday rest. They went into the inner part of the house as if to get some wheat, and they stabbed him in the stomach. Then Rechab and his brother Baana slipped away. So Rechab and Baana murdered Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, who was reigning in the bigger part of Israel. So, ordinarily, somebody would think that it was David that sent these people to go and commit that atrocity because of the war between the two families. So David also proved his innocence. And how did he prove it? We shall soon see. Then they had gone into the house while he was lying on the bed in his bedroom. After they stabbed and eliminated him, they cut off his head. Taking it with them, they traveled all night by way of the Arabah. They brought the head of Ishbosheth to David at Hebron and said to the king, "Here is the head of Ishbosheth, son of Saul, your enemy, who tried to eliminate you. This day the Lord has avenged my lord the king against Saul and his offspring." So they thought they were doing David a favor. But how did David respond? David answered Rechab and his brother Baana, the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, "As surely as the Lord lives, who has delivered me out of every trouble. When someone told me Saul is dead and thought he was bringing good news, I seized him and put him to death in Ziklag. That was the reward I gave him for his news. How much more when wicked men have murdered an innocent man in his own house and on his own bed? Should I not now demand his blood from your hand and rid the earth of you?" So David gave an order to his men, and they eliminated them. So the two brothers, Rechab and Baana, were also unalived. They cut off their hands and feet and hung the bodies by the pool in Hebron. But they took the head of Ishbosheth and buried it in Abner's tomb at Hebron. So this was how the elimination series just continued. It was like a chain. It was becoming a chain reaction, and it was becoming very worrisome. It was becoming very disturbing. People eliminating people at the slightest opportunity. And this hate was planted by Saul. That is why it is terrible to hate. It is terrible to be jealous. It is terrible to be envious. All right? Just love people. Just play your own game. Face your face, fly on your lane, and don't be envious. Don't be jealous against somebody. If God has blessed somebody, allow him to prosper. Allow him to enjoy whatever God has blessed him with. But Saul would not allow David to breathe. And that led to this chain reaction of elimination of people, innocent people, from one person to another. So this was where Israel began to look for a way to solve this problem of hate and war between the family of Saul and the family of David. And that is where we now saw David beginning to act as the leader of Israel. All right. So, what happened next? All the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and said, "We are your own flesh and blood. In the past, while Saul was king over us, you were the one who led Israel on their military campaigns, and the Lord said to you, 'You will shepherd my people Israel, and you will become their ruler.'" When all the elders of Israel had come to King David at Hebron, the king made a covenant with them at Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel. So it was at this point that the whole Israel went out and anointed David king over Israel. That was after he had become the king of only Judah for 7.5 good years, running away from Saul. So David was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned 40 years. In Hebron, he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and in Jerusalem, he reigned over all Israel and Judah 33 years. So 33 plus 7 is 40, and then plus 6 months. The king and his men marched to Jerusalem to attack the Jebusites who lived there. The Jebusites said to David, "You will not get in here. Even the blind and the lame can ward you off." So the Jebusites were very very confident that they were going to defeat David. They thought David cannot get in here. Nevertheless, David captured the fortress of Zion, which is the city of David. On that day, David has said, anyone who conquers the Jebusites will have to use the water shaft to reach those lame and blind, who are David's enemies. That is why they say the blind and lame will not enter the palace. David was a man of war. So he didn't give a damn. He decided to move on despite the threat. David then took up residence in the fortress and called it the City of David. So after David defeated the Jebusites, he called the place the City of David. He built up the area around it from the terraces inward, and he became more and more powerful because the Lord God Almighty was with him. You see, when God is with you, there is nothing you cannot achieve. And God was with David, and he also tried as much as possible to maintain a good relationship with God. He never trusted in himself. He was never proud of himself, like Abner was. No, he wasn't. Everything he did, he inquired from God first. and he gave all his loyalty to God, and that was why he was very successful. Even when he made mistakes, he went back to God and asked for forgiveness and amended his ways. Now Hiram, king of Tyre, sent envoys to David along with cedar logs and carpenters and stonemasons, and they built a palace for David. You know, even king of other cities came and helped build David's palace. Then David knew that the Lord had established him as king over Israel and had exalted his kingdom for the sake of his people, Israel. After he left Hebron, David took more concubines and wives in Jerusalem, and more sons and daughters were born to him. All right. When the Philistines heard that David had been anointed king over Israel, they went up in full force to search for him. But David heard about it and went down to the stronghold. Now the Philistines had come and spread out in the valley of Rephaim. So David inquired of the Lord. Like I said, he would always inquire of the Lord, what do I do next? And that is what God likes. That is what he expects from his children. Shall I go and attack the Philistines? Will you deliver them into my hands? The Lord answered him, Go, for I will surely deliver the Philistines into your hands. So David went to Baal Perazim, and there he defeated them. He said, As waters break out, the Lord has broken out against my enemies before me. So that place was called Baal-perazim. The Philistines abandoned their idols there, and David and his men carried them off. Once more, the Philistines came up and spread out in the valley of Rephaim. So David inquired of the Lord. Look at it again. He inquired, and he answered, Do not go straight up. This time around, God gave him a different directive. He said, But circle around behind them and attack them in front of the poplar tree. As soon as you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the poplar trees, move quickly because that will mean the Lord has gone in front of you to strike the Philistine army. So that was what God told him. So David did as the Lord commanded him, and he struck down the Philistines all the way from Gibeon to Gaza. So that was how David was, making his victory, making progress, being victorious. He was always listening to God. All right. So David again brought together all the able young men of Israel, 30,000. He and all his men went to Baalah in Judah to bring up from there the ark of God, which is called by the name of the Lord Almighty, who is enthroned between the cherubim on the ark. So what you see on the screen now is the ark of God, which they went to bring. They set the ark of God on a new cart, as you can see, and brought it from the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. Uzzah and Ahio, sons of Abinadab, were guiding the new cart with the ark of God on it, and Ahio was walking in front of it. David and all Israel were celebrating with all their might before the Lord. So everybody was happy. As you can see, this is the population of Israel celebrating with the ark. All right. So, and the oxen were pulling the cart that was carrying the ark. So they were celebrating with all their might before the Lord with castanets, harps, lyres, timbrels, sistrums, and cymbals, different musical instruments. When they came to the threshing floor of Nacon, Uzzah reached out and took hold of the ark of God because the oxen stumbled. The Lord's anger burned against Uzzah because of his irrelevant act. Therefore, God struck him down and he gave up there beside the ark of God. So that was Uzzah. That is Uzzah you see on the screen. He ended unfortunately because he wanted to help. It was very unfortunate. So when the ark wanted to fall, Uzzah reached out to help to stop the ark from falling, and he lost his life because the command was that ordinary people should not touch the ark. The ark should only be touched by the priests. So that was how Uzzah lost his life, unfortunately. Okay, so when that happened, it was a terrible thing, and everybody became dismayed, including David himself. Look at David, he became dismayed. He didn't know what to do. All right, so then David was angry because the Lord's wrath had broken out against Uzzah, and to this day, that place is called Perez Uzzah. So they called the place Perez Uzzah. David was afraid of the Lord that day and said, "How can the ark of the Lord ever come to me?" He was not willing to take the ark of the Lord to be with him in the city of David. Instead, he took it to the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite. Obed-Edom was an ordinary person. And David said, this ark is now leading to people's death. I won't bring it to my house. Let me keep it in the house of an ordinary person. But what happened? The ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite, for 3 months, only 3 months. And the Lord blessed him and his entire household. Can you imagine? The Lord blessed this ordinary poor man within 3 months because the ark of the Lord was in his house. Today, the Lord will bless you if you harbor God in your house. If you allow God to come into your life, the Lord will bless you the way he blessed Obed-Edom. Now, King David was told, the Lord has blessed the house of Obed-Edom and everything he has because of the ark of God. So David went to bring up the ark. This time around, David said, oh, so this ark is no longer killing people. It's now blessing people. Let me go and bring it. You see, this is what happens in life. So David went there to bring the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with rejoicing. When those who were carrying the ark of the Lord had taken 6 steps, he sacrificed a bull and the fattened calf. Wearing a linen ephod, David was dancing before the Lord with all his might, while he and all Israel were bringing up the ark of the Lord with shouts and the sound of trumpets. As the ark of the Lord was entering the city of David, Michal, daughter of Saul, that is David's wife, watched from a window, and when she saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, she despised him in her heart. They brought the ark of the Lord and set it in its place inside the tent that David had pitched for it, and David sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings before the Lord. After he had finished sacrificing the burnt offerings and the fellowship offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord Almighty. Then he gave a loaf of bread, a cake of dates, and a cake of raisins to each person in the whole crowd of Israelites, both men and men, and all the people went to their homes. When David returned home to bless his household, Michal, daughter of Saul, came out to meet him and said, "How the king of Israel has distinguished himself today, going around half naked in full view of the slave girls of his servants, as any vulgar fellow would." So this was Michal. Michal watching through the window and being displeased the way her husband was dancing almost half naked, not knowing that the man was excited. All right. So when David came back home, his wife confronted her. "Why were you dancing like like a crazy man, almost half naked?" All right. And what did David answer her? Well, David gave her the answer that really came from the bottom of his heart. And David said to Michal, "It was before the Lord who chose me rather than your father or anyone from his house when he appointed me ruler over the Lord's people Israel. I will celebrate before the Lord. I will become even more undignified than this, and I will be humiliated in my own eyes. But by these slave girls you spoke of, I will be held in honor." And Michal, daughter of Saul, had no children to the day of her death. So, because of that singular condemnation from Michal, she had no child. All right. So, this was how David became the king of the whole of Israel after all the struggle, after all the trouble between him, between his house and the house of Saul. It was an unnecessary war, an unnecessary fight, and as you could see, many people lost their lives just because of that. It was something that um, they would have just settled the way they settled it, but because everybody wanted to defend his master, the elimination spree continued. This one would attack the other one and eliminate as much as he would. The other one would retaliate and eliminate as much as he wanted. So the lesson we have to take home is that we shouldn't play jealousy. Jealousy is dangerous. Envy is dangerous. What caused all these things was jealousy. It was envy. It was greed, that I want to benefit from where I am, from where I am serving, not minding what God had promised, because God had promised that David would be the next king. But instead of everybody supporting, including Abner, the commander of Saul's army, Abner rather chose to toe the wrong path of making Saul's son the next king, probably because he felt that he would be controlling the boy and still continue to be the kingmaker and the voice that spoke in Israel. So this was a selfish intention that led to the elimination of many people, and at the end, even he himself, Abner, lost his life, and also the son of Saul, whom he made the king, also lost his life. So, men and brethren, this is where we are drawing the curtain today in today's storytelling. We will be doing this from time to time, and I crave your indulgence. Anytime we come online, please come into the room and let us rub minds together. With time, we will be allowing you to also make your contribution. You could have the chance to come into the room and make your contribution so that we rub minds together, we learn from one another, and continue to get better as children of God. Thank you very much for tuning in, and do have a nice day. See you next time, and bye for now.